Hello, this is Jessica Azoulay. I'm Program Director of Alliance for a Green Economy, and this is a briefing to help prepare you for upcoming public hearings on New York State's Reforming the Energy Vision process, also known as REV. REV represents a major overhaul of New York energy policy, and it is being led by New York State Governor Cuomo and the New York State Public Service Commission. This briefing is brought to you by the New York State Energy Democracy Alliance, which is a collaboration of community-based organizations, grassroots groups, and others who are working together to advance a just and participatory transition to a resilient, localized, and democratically controlled clean energy economy in New York State. The Energy Democracy Alliance is organizing to participate in the upcoming hearings on REV, and we hope you'll join us. We will be calling on the Public Service Commission and Governor Cuomo to make REV real, renewable, equitable, accountable, and local. We will be calling for clear, clean energy goals focused on real renewable energy and energy efficiency, not false solutions like natural gas and nuclear power. We will demand that all New Yorkers have the opportunity to benefit from energy efficiency and renewables, and that the state dedicate funding for clean energy development to the communities that need it most. We will stand up for consumer protections and a seat at the table in making energy decisions that affect our lives. We will call for green jobs in our local communities and express our desire for local and community ownership models that will best benefit our neighborhoods. Please join the organizing and help us spread the word. Here is a schedule of the upcoming hearings. Hearings have already taken place in New York City and in Yonkers. If you missed the hearing in your area, you can submit written comments, and I will discuss how to do that at the end of this briefing. So what is REV? REV stands for Reforming the Energy Vision, which is Governor Cuomo's signature energy policy. This policy is being pursued through a series of proceedings at the Public Service Commission, which is the state agency that regulates the for-profit utility companies in New York State. These proceedings are redefining New York energy policy, including the regulations that govern utility companies, as well as the way our energy rates are set. The REV process will change how we are charged for electricity. It will also change rules around who and what entities are allowed to own New York energy resources, particularly New York's clean, renewable resources. The REV process began last year in April and will continue well into 2017. There have been many steps along the way, but the most important thing for you to know is that we are now in the phase of the process called Track 2. During the Track 2 phase, the Public Service Commission will set new rules for how utilities can make money and how different kinds of energy are valued in the market. Before I go into the detail about what is at stake in the upcoming hearings, I want to give a quick overview of how today's electricity system works. This will help you understand the changes that are being proposed and the incredible opportunities and potential pitfalls presented by the REV process. For those of you who saw my briefing on Rev Track 1 earlier this year, this review will cover familiar territory, but I hope you will bear with me as I bring new viewers up to speed. Most of the electricity in New York is generated at large, centralized power plants. These are nuclear, coal, and gas plants, as well as hydropower. The power produced at these plants travels over high-voltage power lines to lines owned and operated by the utility companies that you buy energy from. From there, it gets to us, the consumers. The utility companies and the Public Service Commission call us ratepayers because we pay electricity rates. When we buy electricity, the money flows out of our communities and goes to the shareholders of the national and multinational companies that own the majority of the power production and distribution system in New York. New York's electricity system is in transition. An increasing amount of renewable energy is coming online. For instance, wind power has grown by 3,000% in the last decade. Solar is growing rapidly as well, supported in large part by the governor's New York Sun initiative. At the same time, many consumers are saving energy through weatherization and the installation of energy-saving lights and appliances. And a small but rapidly increasing number of us are starting to generate our own electricity, for instance by putting solar panels on our roofs. Energy efficiency and rooftop solar are reducing demand for energy. For instance, in central New York, demand for electricity has dropped by 7% over the last 10 years. All of this is putting economic pressure on many of the large coal and nuclear plants, which are aging and becoming unprofitable in this new environment. Our distribution system is aging as well. To keep all those power plants in business and keep the distribution system that brings us power from those plants would be incredibly expensive. The Public Service Commission estimates that the cost of supporting New York's transmission and distribution system over the next 10 years will be $30 billion unless we change business as usual. One final trend I want to point to is that while in general electricity demand is not growing very much, or in some parts of the state is declining, peak demand is growing. Peak demand refers to times when many people use a lot of electricity all at once. For instance, on hot summer days when many people turn on or turn up their air conditioners. Right now, our electricity system is built and maintained so that it can always serve this peak demand, which means that we pay for a much larger system than we use most of the time. This costs us a lot of money. The Public Service Commission estimates that if we could reduce the 100 hours of greatest peak demand in New York, we could save up to $1.7 billion per year in electricity costs. The Reforming the Energy Vision process was launched in response to these trends and transitions in our energy system. Through REV, the Public Service Commission seeks to accelerate the shift from centralized power generation and distribution toward distributed energy resources. Distributed energy resources include energy efficiency retrofits and weatherization, small-scale renewables like residential solar and other decentralized power sources, as well as storage technologies like batteries. Microgrids are also considered distributed energy resources. Microgrids are small sections of the grid that have their own power sources embedded in them and can disconnect from the larger grid and operate on their own if the larger grid goes down. Microgrids are most useful during extreme weather events and can be used to ensure there is still power for essential services and essential buildings in a neighborhood if the larger grid is out. Demand response programs are also considered distributed energy resources. These are efforts to have us change when we use energy to avoid using it during peak times. If the goal of ramping up our use of distributed energy resources can be achieved, the Public Service Commission believes that we can reduce our reliance on large power plants and reduce the size and cost of the electricity distribution system. This would have many benefits, including making the system more affordable and reducing pollution. It could also mean that by shifting to a distributed energy system and engaging in energy conservation through efficiency measures and weatherization, more money would stay in our own communities instead of going into the hands of large investor-owned companies that currently own our energy resources in New York. This is the potential promise of REV, and that it's why we are urging you to come out and speak up at the upcoming public hearings to make sure that REV is pursued in a way that ensures the benefits of this transition end up in the hands of our local communities, particularly communities currently locked out of participating in the clean energy economy. So how does the Public Service Commission intend to accelerate this transition to cleaner, more distributed energy? Mostly through changing the nature of electricity markets in New York. REV is primarily a market-based approach to change utility and customer behavior. In the first phase of REV, called Track 1, the Public Service Commission ruled that each utility would set up a platform that will make it easier for customers and energy providers to buy and sell distributed energy resources and services. This platform would include an online portal where customers could shop for products and programs that might help them reduce their energy use, change when they use energy, produce their own energy, or store energy. The Commission also ordered the Department of Public Service staff to propose new prices for distributed energy resources. Prices that would reflect the economic, environmental, and social value of things like solar energy, weatherization, and efficient appliances. These prices might encourage customers to use cleaner energy resources or to save energy. Additionally, the Commission has ordered its staff to propose ways to get the utility companies to change their behavior by changing the rules around how utility companies make money. Right now, utility companies primarily make money by selling energy and by building infrastructure to transport that energy to us. They get to charge a profit on the energy and on the power lines and gas lines they build. Utility companies have a fundamental profit motive to oppose anything that helps people use less energy or allows people to produce their own energy. New energy-saving programs and energy-producing technologies are a threat to their business model. Under Rev Track 2, a proposal which is the subject of the hearings this month, the staff is proposing different ways for utilities to make money. For instance, by rewarding them financially for helping to meet various public policy goals, such as reducing peak demand, connecting renewables to the grid more rapidly, and achieving affordability for customers. In thinking about the potential benefits and the potential pitfalls of REV, I think there are some key questions that need to be considered. Number 1, what will utility companies be paid for? What of value do they offer or can they offer to society, and how should we be asked to compensate them for that value? Number 2, how will prices be set in the new markets? Which environmental, health, and other social factors should be included in price to encourage people to adopt clean and safe energy over dirty and dangerous sources? Number 3, if the Public Service Commission creates a mass market for energy-saving and energy-producing technologies and programs, what consumer protections will be in place to make sure that companies cannot engage in predatory lending or deceptive marketing? And number 4, who will end up owning and benefiting from all this renewable energy and the energy savings in REV? Who will reap the savings and the financial rewards? The Department of Public Service staff has put forth 2 white papers with proposed answers to these questions, and the proposals in those white papers are the subject of the upcoming hearings. The staff proposes that utilities will be paid to create the online portal for customers to shop for distributed energy resources. They also propose that utilities be financially rewarded for reducing peak demand, improving energy efficiency, providing better affordability, and accelerating the interconnection of renewables to the grid. They are not currently proposing financial penalties for failing to meet those goals. Under staff's proposal, distributed energy resources will be valued for their contributions to grid efficiency, reducing peak, and displacing carbon emissions. They will not necessarily be valued for their contributions to public health, the local economy, or other social and environmental benefits. The staff has also been tasked with proposing consumer protection rules for companies participating in the REV markets. Getting those protections right is important, as is ensuring that the Commission has the resources and the commitment to enforcing the rules. Many people in New York have been preyed upon by the energy service companies, who go door to door selling the promise of lower electricity rates. Research has ultimately shown that for the most part, these companies charge more than utilities for energy, and that consumers have been misled. We must ensure this kind of deception is not expanded within REV. As for ownership, the Public Service Commission has already ruled that utility companies, in most cases, will not own distributed energy resources, but this does not mean that those resources will be owned by local communities or local individuals. They are likely to be owned and controlled by other private for-profit corporations, unless programs and rules are created to encourage and ensure local ownership and local control. Right now, staff is not proposing such programs or rules. Why does local ownership matter? Here are some graphs from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, which is a great organization that puts out many interesting reports about energy and other topics. In a report titled Advantage Local, the Institute found that a 20 megawatt wind energy project built in Minnesota, but owned by the Spanish firm Iberdrola, would add $20 million to the state's economy and create about 10 long-term jobs. But if that same project were owned by Minnesota farmers instead, it would create 20 long-term jobs and generate as much as $68 million in economic activity for the state. Another example from their report concerns Missouri, where there is a requirement for utilities to get a certain percentage of their power from renewable energy. The Institute found that Missouri ratepayers could save up to $200 million by importing wind and electricity from nearby states. But if the state met its renewable standard with in-state wind instead of out-of-state wind, the economy would gain at least $4.2 billion and over 3,000 jobs. And if that wind power were locally owned, the economic value could rise as high as $14 billion. And wind could support nearly 9,000 jobs in the state. The REV process offers various opportunities for local ownership, many of them hard fought for by the public interest community. Many of these opportunities are being considered in proceedings that are separate but related to the main REV proceeding. I want to touch on them now just so you are aware of them. Right now, most of the opportunities for local ownership are for people and businesses who can implement weatherization and efficiency retrofits or install solar on their own property. The state has some programs in place to encourage homeowners and businesses to participate in efficiency and solar. REV may increase those opportunities by creating more value in the market for efficiency and solar. One way this could happen is by creating value not just for the energy savings or energy production on site, but by paying property owners for helping to reduce peak demand. When peak demand is reduced, everyone saves money because of the avoided expenses. So some of those savings could be passed to the consumers whose energy savings or solar installations contributed to the reduction of peak demand. But the changes coming under REV may also increase the barriers faced by low-income people, people of color, and other groups who experience inequality of access to money, credit, and property in our society. The REV process places a higher reliance on market mechanisms for promoting distributed energy resources, and less of an emphasis on subsidies and state programs. Markets tend to favor groups who already have access to resources and power in our society, and tend to hurt those who lack power and access to resources. As REV moves forward, it will be critical for all of us to keep pushing the Public Service Commission and the Governor to ensure that REV works to reverse inequality instead of reinforcing it. We will also need to protect and improve the state programs that support low-income access to efficiency and renewables, and to call for a large portion of state clean energy funds to be targeted toward remedying inequality and creating universal access to the opportunities and benefits of clean energy. As part of the REV process, many environmental groups, along with groups working with low-income communities, called on the Public Service Commission to enable shared renewables. Under a shared renewables policy, people who don't own property, or whose property is not suitable for installing solar or wind, can buy into or subscribe to a shared solar or wind installation somewhere else and receive the credits for the energy production from that facility on their own bills. This summer, the Commission approved shared renewables, which they also called community net metering. There is currently a process underway led by the Commission to figure out how to make these arrays and wind farms more accessible to low-income people. The Commission needs to hear from people for whom this kind of access is important, so that they will put good policies, subsidies, and grants into place to truly create the opportunity for low-income people to participate in shared renewables. The Commission is also considering allowing community choice aggregation, which is a way to enable local municipalities to take control away from the utility companies in making energy choices, doing energy planning, creating energy efficiency programs, and developing energy generation. Under a community choice aggregation program, the local government takes over the energy decisions and can build their own power generation like solar and wind farms. The utility company is still responsible for maintaining the grid and delivering the power to the homes and businesses under a community choice aggregation program. Community choice aggregation, if done well, can put a community in the driver's seat over the energy choices being made, can save money, and can increase clean energy. Finally, I'll discuss the State Clean Energy Fund, which is a sister proceeding to the REV. I have mentioned that New York policymakers are attempting to shift to a market-based clean energy system, away from subsidies and state-supported programs. In accordance with that, the Public Service Commission is planning to phase out, over 10 years, the collections most of us pay on our energy bills that go toward supporting clean energy programs and subsidies. The Clean Energy Fund proceeding is considering how much money will be collected from all of us for subsidies, research, financing, education, and other government programs that support clean energy development. The current proposal is for a $5 billion fund to be collected and spent over 10 years. This is significantly less than what the state has been collecting and spending on clean energy in recent years. For instance, last year there was $1 billion collected. The Clean Energy Fund would be managed by the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, also known as NYSERDA, and would be spent on subsidies, education, research, innovation, and finance. The Energy Democracy Alliance has been calling on the Public Service Commission to require NYSERDA to dedicate 40% of the Clean Energy Fund to serving the needs of low and moderate income people and communities, as well as environmental justice communities and communities of color who are currently burdened by the highest levels of pollution from our energy system. Even though the Clean Energy Fund is not the subject of the upcoming hearings on REV, there are no public hearings scheduled for the Clean Energy Fund, so we encourage you to talk about the Clean Energy Fund in your testimony if you wish. Now I will turn to the hearings themselves. The upcoming hearings are a chance to talk about your energy vision and what the Public Service Commission should do to help you and your community reach your energy goals. They are a chance to talk about the rules you think utility companies should have to follow, and to say what you think utility companies should be compensated for or penalized for. We hope you will join us in calling on the Commission to make REV real, renewable, equitable, accountable, and local. If you want to give a statement at the hearing, you will be asked to sign up when you arrive. You can also sign up any time during the event. You do not need to sign up ahead of time. The event will be broken into two parts: a public information session and a public statement hearing. For the first hour, staff will give a presentation and answer questions. It's important to be aware that questions and statements you make during this public information portion will not become part of the public record. Once the public statement hearing portion of the event starts, each speaker will be called upon and will be allowed to speak uninterrupted, and a court reporter will write down what you say. At this point, the staff and the commissioners will not answer any questions or respond to your statement. If a lot of people sign up to speak, they will probably give each speaker a time limit of 4 to 5 minutes. Your statement during this portion of the hearing will become part of the public record of REV. Now I will discuss some of the talking points that have been developed by the Energy Democracy Alliance. We are calling on the Commission to make REV real, renewable, equitable, accountable, and local. For our renewable talking points, we will be calling on the Commission to create enforceable renewable energy and energy efficiency targets for utilities. This is important because under the current proposal from staff, utilities would neither be rewarded nor penalized for their performance on environmental goals. Without these enforceable targets, we have no way of ensuring that REV will put New York on a path to meet a 100% renewable energy system. We will also be calling on the Commission to reject any more coal plant and nuclear plant bailouts and to reject permits for natural gas pipelines. REV is supposed to be moving New York toward fewer dirty centralized power plants and fewer transmission lines and pipes. Bailing out coal and nuclear plants and building more pipelines is going in the wrong direction. We will also say that the health, environmental, and social costs of dirty energy should be reflected in energy prices. The REV proposal includes the idea that the market should value certain kinds of energy over others based on their value to the electricity system and to society. But the benefit-cost analysis proposal from staff largely leaves out public health costs, most environmental pollutants, including methane, and other social costs or benefits in determining which resources to value. Finally, we will be calling on the Commission to reject staff's proposal to value nuclear power as equal to renewables in reducing carbon emissions. The staff has proposed several scorecard metrics that would require utility companies to report their progress toward a variety of goals. One of these would include nuclear energy in a scorecard along with renewable energy and energy efficiency, as if it has the same value to society. Utilities would look good if they have high percentages of nuclear generation, even if they had relatively low levels of renewables or efficiency. We believe our renewable standards must remain free from all dirty energy sources. For our talking points regarding equity, we will call on the Commission to create policies that will remove barriers to clean energy faced by renters, low-income people, people of color, and other groups who have been locked out of the clean energy opportunities. REV is a market-driven initiative, and markets tend to favor people who already have advantages. Without deliberate intervention and intentional policy to remove barriers and correct for injustice, REV will reinforce inequality. We will demand that 40% of the Clean Energy Fund should be directed toward communities suffering the highest energy and pollution burdens. You'll recall that the Clean Energy Fund is a proposal under the REV framework that would spend $5 billion over 10 years on energy efficiency and renewable subsidies, state programs, and research. Everyone contributes to this fund, but because of inequities in access, not everyone can take advantage of the subsidies and programs offered. Targeting these funds to those who need them the most will ensure that everyone can benefit from the renewable energy economy. We will also stand up for low-income people to have affordable access to a basic amount of energy to keep their homes warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and the lights on year-round. New York is currently facing an energy affordability crisis. More than 268,000 households in New York had their utility service shut off last year because they couldn't pay their bills. This is unacceptable and must be addressed. Finally, we will recommend that utilities should be scored on how accessible their online portals and REV marketplaces are to businesses owned by people of color and women. And we will demand that to the extent that utilities are directly purchasing energy resources from third parties, they should be required to purchase a certain percentage from minority and women-owned businesses. We believe utilities should be held accountable for providing opportunities to people of color and women. For our accountability talking points, we will call for strong consumer protections to be put into place so that energy service companies and other businesses cannot use deceptive marketing practices or predatory lending in the new REV marketplace. The Public Service Commission must commit to fully funding its oversight activities and penalizing bad actors. We will also call attention to the fact that many people in New York still do not know about the REV process or understand how it will affect them. REV must be better publicized and better explained, and underrepresented groups must be consulted when policy is being developed. The process of developing energy policy should be inclusive and transparent so that it is not dominated by utilities and for-profit companies, but instead driven by the needs of the public. At every decision point, communities on the front lines of energy pollution, energy insecurity, climate threats, and economic depression should be involved in determining New York's energy future. Finally, we will call on the Commission and Governor Cuomo to make intervenor funds available so that consumer and environmental advocates can work on a level playing field with utility companies as REV implementation gets underway. This is important because most of the detailed decisions around REV implementation and the cost of REV will be made in utility rate cases. Intervenor funds would provide money for consumers, environmental justice groups to hire lawyers and experts to participate in those cases. We will also call on the Commission to ensure that REV promotes local benefits and local ownership. We believe utilities should be required to procure a percentage of local and community-owned energy projects in their territories. As mentioned before, local ownership provides the opportunity to keep energy dollars local and to build local wealth. Additionally, research shows that locally owned renewable projects experience less local resistance than projects owned by large out-of-the-area corporations. We will also call on the Commission to create a rule that any company receiving ratepayer or public funds must meet high road employment standards and hire at least 50% of workers for their publicly funded projects from local workforces. We will demand that jobs and community development benefits should be targeted toward achieving equity in low-income communities and communities of color. Because REV will encourage the development of microgrids, we will demand that local residents be given the opportunity to be decision makers around climate resilience needs and to be the owners of microgrid projects. As climate change increases the frequency and severity of extreme weather events, disaster preparedness is becoming increasingly important. Decisions around which locations in a community will be prioritized for keeping the power on must be made by all members of the community, not just utility companies and wealthy institutions. Finally, we will call on the Commission to ensure that community-based organizations and local governments are supported and funded as ground-level consumer advocates, clean energy enablers, aggregators, navigators, project managers, and workforce coordinators. As New York's energy system shifts and people are being asked to participate as never before in changing how they use energy and to become energy producers, local organizations and municipalities on the ground will be needed to hold businesses accountable for their projects and their workforce standards and hiring practices. They will also be needed by the consumers in the area to help them navigate and make good decisions for their families and for their communities. In closing, we invite you and encourage you to come out to the upcoming public statement hearings on the Reforming the Energy Vision process to call on the Commission to make REV real, renewable, equitable, accountable, and local. You can also submit written comments on REV to the Public Service Commission. To submit a comment, visit the Energy Democracy Alliance website, where we have a link on our homepage and instructions for submitting a comment. If you have any questions about the information covered in this briefing or the upcoming hearings, you can email me at jessica@agreenewyork.org. There is also an enormous amount of information about REV and the related proceedings on the Energy Democracy Alliance website. On that website, you can also find more information about the Energy Democracy Alliance. If you would like to see more information about the Reforming the Energy Vision process, including the staff proposals, comments by other organizations, and comments by the public, as well as all of the dockets for the related proceedings to REV, you can visit the Department of Public Service website at www.dps.ny.gov. Thank you very much for listening to this proceeding, and I hope to see you at an upcoming hearing.